Watch, Listen is supported by Patreon, who actually got this episode unedited, early, and ad-free. If you want to support the podcast, check the link in the description. It's been like a month since we last did this show, I think. I don't think we did an episode in April, did we? Since then...
We might have done, like, right at the start, yes.
Okay.
We've all been a bit busy, haven't we?
We have been a little bit busy, but since then you've had a game come out.
Yes.
How did that go? Tell me about it.
It went good, yeah. Turns out people like the way I write Tron, so that's cool. That's my main...
Was that, like, specific feedback?
Surprise. Oh, yeah, no, the reviews have been incredibly generous. Yeah, no, it's there's been a really good reaction to it, like, from the writing, definitely, which I can take a lot of the credit for, but also just, like, the aesthetics of it and the kind of the world-building stuff, like, which obviously the whole team contributed to, is just, yeah, people seem to dig it, which is really cool. It's really nice and exciting for future stuff. Disney kind of semi-accidentally announced that we were doing more stuff the day before the game launched.
Oh,
so
cool. Okay, that's exciting.
So that's cool. It's nice to have that out there. It's weird. It's the first time I've ever been kind of developing a game with, you know, the audience knowing what we're doing, which is interesting. But,
what do you mean? Like, you don't...
We've never really announced stuff that early out. Most of our announcements are like 6 months before launch at the most. You know?
Wow.
So
yeah, I guess that's
being
true.
like having people just know I'm working on Tron now is cool. It's interesting.
Does that put pressure on?
Less so now that we've done one, I think. I think the first one was like definitely like intimidating because I knew the like the fan base you know, obviously had been like wanting a Tron thing for a while.
Yeah.
And there was a bit that felt like pressure, like, because they were very like, you know, generous again with like when we announced and stuff. But no, the way they kind of have rallied around it and been really like they're into what we're doing, so it feels like the wins in our sales basically, which is cool. Just don't fuck it up, basically. That's the
just the goal anyway, right? Also, sorry if I cough, everybody.
The dream.
I'm sick. This is the third time I've been sick this year. It just keeps happening. That's why my voice sounds terrible. It's fine. As you reflect on this process, is there anything that like particularly stands out as different that you can talk about regarding working with Disney versus every other game you've worked on? Is it just more meetings? That's kind of what I would expect.
You know what? Like, it's not crazy though. Like, I think people, when I talk to like buddies in the industry about it, like, I think people assume like it's very kind of like claustrophobic, and it's much more kind of collaborative. Genuinely, like, I wouldn't. There's no reason to be dishonest about that. Like, it definitely, it feels with this, it's really felt like just everyone wanted to make a good thing, and now as we're doing, you know, more stuff, that's kind of continuing, and it's just been, it's been weird, but I think even when you're working with, you know, a mega company like Disney, like, ultimately you're still just working with creative people, like, totally. Really, like, there's like, you know, obviously there's like executives and meetings and, you know, people in big expensive conference rooms I have to impress every you know, few months or so, but like the day-to-day of it is just like really talented, smart, interesting people trying to solve problems, which is ultimately what both of us are in this for.
It's a good point. Basically. Like, I think probably before I started working at SMS, I would have assumed that it also contained some suits. And it kind of doesn't. It's not that the suits don't exist at Sony, obviously. That's like literally in order to have a functional company.
The smart suits know to leave you to it, though.
Yeah, and I think at SMS, there's nobody that I talk to every day. Our producers are obviously very good at what they do and very important about keeping people on track, but even they are like, wow, that's a really cool idea. Wow, I'm excited about this thing. And I think I probably would have expected that, like, from the outside to be more or less creative people, but I would say 100% of the team is like that, which is super interesting.
And that's the big thing for me, is like, just as and this is very true as like dude who owns indie game studio, it's really hard basically to find new people to learn from. Like, basically you have hiring and business partners. Those are the, like, in the work kind of context, like, it's not like you can move companies and kind of learn new things on new jobs and stuff. Like, I'm basically locked in. I'm Bithell Games, right? That is what it is. And therefore the best ways for me to learn are basically either to hire really clever people, which I do as regularly as I can, but also stuff like this where working with Disney has just allowed me to go into a bunch of rooms and just talk to people and learn just stuff, and obviously attached to Disney and Disney games, and then Tron specifically, there's just all these talented kind of storytellers, writers, artists, and there's a lot of opportunity there to just kind of soak stuff up and learn stuff. And the best thing is it's this kind of this education that's very focused, because it's focused on a thing you're making together. I didn't realize it at the time, but like genuinely weird premonition for like future stuff for me was there used to be a games event in Nottingham called Game City, which was really awesome. It's a really special event and tied to the museum that's still there and does awesome work. When I made Thomas Was Alone, initially it kind of came out and it was like a modest kind of success. Thomas Was Alone was definitely one that like built over time. When it first came out, it was okay, did okay, and they wanted me to do something at this event, but they couldn't come up with kind of what to do, but they knew they wanted like a lot of content and there wasn't much. So the pitch I gave them as like 20-something idiot was, can we do a thing where every day of the event, which was like a week, we do a post-mortem with someone else kind of giving me feedback on my game. Like I get the game to them, they play it, and then on stage they just like tear it apart creatively, and we kind of talk about the decisions that were made and the kind of.
It's a great idea.
And it was so cool. It's the kind of thing I could never do now, and I don't know if anyone could do now, because it kind of in the age of social media, I don't think anyone would like volunteer. But it was literally like on one day it was like. Anthony Johnston, who's like a really great writer, comic books, did Atomic Blonde and a bunch of stuff, was like laying into the story with Kieran Gillen, who's a lovely bloke, and like so these great writers just kind of tearing apart Thomas Was Alone's like writing, and me just teaching me loads of stuff like on stage, and then like artists and game developers. I think it was Adam Saltzman. I think he gave feedback. Like it was just basically just this lovely kind of post-mortem process. And what's great is that was an amazing education for me. I basically went to school for a week and just learned from all these people who I would never get in a room with to discuss my work and kind of get feedback from.
That's awesome.
And Disney kind of reminds me of that. It's getting into rooms with. I think I might have even said this on the show before, but like getting feedback on my narrative and like world-based storytelling from a dude who literally designed the queue for the Guardians of the Galaxy ride.
Yeah.
Like that kind of level of like, this is a guy who has to tell a story to thousands of people a day, with different languages from all over the world, convey a narrative and kind of get the key points and assume that a lot of people in that queue never even saw the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, and kind of establish the rules and the lore of that. All of this stuff, like, having that guy give feedback on like, hey, here's how you're going to explain Tron to people, like, was just like this kind of stuff. It's just it's the kind of education you can't pay for.
That's a thing that, again, I feel is so valuable to me personally. Like, we've had this conversation before where I got promoted, and if I were to get promoted again, I'd be like, I don't know that I want that, because I just want to write stuff.
You Captain Kirk it.
Yeah, but I also love that I work with people who have way more experience than me and that I can learn from. And that doesn't mean that I don't disagree with things or like have my own opinion, but that I feel like there's such a wealth of knowledge. As the person who's become like the writing guy at your company, do you ever feel that way? Like, I feel like I would hate to be the writing guy.
It sucks to be like the It really like it sucks to be the most kind of experienced or knowledgeable thing on a subject. That is like, from a career perspective, I'm a big believer that like finding those opportunities to learn, that's the whole point. Otherwise, why are you doing it? Like once you've gone past that initial excitement of, oh my god, I made a video game.
You know the thing I'm the most knowledgeable in all of my writers' rooms, which is so lame, but they did also tell me it was the benefit in hiring me, is that I've played the most video games. And that is useful. It's surprisingly useful, because I'm like, oh, well, like this game, or someone will be like, what game did this? And I'll be like, this one. Like, I have all of the answers of every game I've ever played, which you never would have thought would be useful in game dev, but it is actually useful. But for that to be the thing that I'm best at is great, because it's not fucking useful. Like, it's not actually a useful skill outside of that one writer's room, like.
Well, it is, and there's value to that, especially as a lot of people in.
But that's about it.
But no, it is that's what I'm saying about kind of, that's one of the reasons I've been drawn into this kind of world of doing like licensed stuff, is it opens up those opportunities to just go and learn from new people that I wouldn't get to work with otherwise, and it's super useful. Like other than that, my only option is hiring talented people, which I do, but obviously I'm indie, so I can't just hire.
It's also a resource issue.
You
can't be like, oh, I'm gonna hire George R. Martin to help me write Tron.
I have to hire. I would play the shit out of the George R. Martin.
Yeah, but he'd never finish it.
If he wants it, I'll give up the IP. You can take over. I want to play that.
You can have it.
Hey, Austin.
Hello, Austin.
I wasn't. I was desperately trying to work out the thread of where this, because I joined and the first word I heard was writer's room, and I was like, they're talking about the strike. And then it very quickly migrated a different direction. Yeah. I don't know how we're going to do this show without our writers. It's going to be
the team.
We are non-union.
The audience will already notice the quality.
That's true. We are.
But our writers are union.
Oh, our
10 writers who write all this are union.
You're right. So
the audience may have noticed we're already dipping.
Yeah, for sure.
100%.
Austin, we were talking about. I asked Mike what it's like to be the writer guy. And if it's annoying to be the person in the room who is the best / most experienced at something, but I feel like that's also your whole job. Like, how often do you get to work with a team where you learn something about your own field?
Depends on what you mean by that, because, for example, when hiring orchestral musicians, they are routinely far more experienced. You know, they're often my parents' age or older. In many cases, I mean, it's a mix. There's studio musicians, especially now. I've reached an age where there's also often like younger, fresh out of school members of the orchestra and whatnot. But I always liked to conscientiously build a roster of folks where there's people. You know, perfect example. One of my first sessions 15 years ago in LA with the Hollywood Orchestra. You know, I had Steve Ardoti as principal cello. Well, here's a guy who, you know, is John Williams' principal cellist for 20 years, and then was in the section since the 80s, playing on scores of his, and not just Williams, but every composer you can think of, you know, every major composer in Hollywood.
Is there a specific section that you want to get like the old hands in? Is there like a section of an orchestra that's like on the wheel of the ship, basically? Like it's like, as long as I've got a good cellist, I'm all right. Like, is there that kind of thing in orchestras, or is it very?
I mean, they're all great.
Percussion, right? Like, if your percussion's bad, everybody's.
That's what I was just wondering. Is like, is there like? Yeah, is there like a safe pair of hands job?
Well, like, first off, percussion.
Because I know I'll be all right if I've got a good programmer. Like, if I've got a good programmer, the rest of it can fall into place, you know?
Yeah, I don't think there's a great equivalent to that insofar as you need everyone in the orchestra to be great, because it's amazing how 80 people, if one person is playing really noticeably out of tune, even if they're way in the back of the violins,
you can hear it.
You hear it, and it will actually pull the whole thing down. And so some positions are obviously more damaging than others in that way. Like a single violin that's not on their A game is going to be. I know, my studio invader.
Oh my gosh, this is Canvas's Play Watch Listen debut.
Yeah, and right next to my very apt Play Watch Listen coaster that lives on my desk permanently.
Me too.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I don't have a coaster. I don't have a fucking coaster. Where's my fucking coaster?
Well, I also have trophies for both of you. I just haven't given you.
Oh, okay.
For that award we won one time.
Oh yeah, yeah, about that.
I'll give you a coaster next time you come visit, Mike.
You're gonna definitely have some doggy related
soon, I think.
ASMR of her like panting, even though you can't see her.
Totally fine with it. I wonder what would happen if Banjo saw her. Do we just have a dog podcast?
A dog off.
That'd be great.
She doesn't seem to ever react to screens. Like if I pull up Angela on like a video call, to her she just is like, I know that's bullshit. I know that she's not here.
That's a drawing. I have a friend whose dog will always bark at horses on screens. Every horse. They could be there for a second and he'll bark at them. So Game of Thrones was really difficult for him to watch because the dog barks at every horse.
Unwatchable. Yeah, I like that.
Sorry, that was an aside to the aside, Austin.
Yeah, well, long and short of it is that you don't, this is purely subjective. I really like the way I've built the orchestra that I've worked with here in town. over the years in terms of like choosing the specific musicians was I really liked the concertmaster, which is the absolute, like, that's the team captain. That's the first chair, the first violins, the one that's immediately to the left of the conductor. That's the most senior position.
Why are they called concertmaster?
Well, it's a historic thing. Concertmaster was the...
They roll the die.
The concertmaster was in the olden days. They were also the conductor, the first violin. There was no such thing as conductors until in the modern sense. There were no conductors until the mid 1800s, about 160, 170 years ago.
Damn.
Another industry taken over by bureaucracy.
Actually, what it was pure pragmatism because orchestras were small enough. Like if you think of a string quartet, there's never a conductor, right? Well, there's like a threshold where now you need someone to act as the traffic cop.
It's like lead metrics. There's a certain number of staff where you start to need middle layers of management.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
It's pretty much exactly that.
Oh my god!
And
then when will it end?
Initially,
this is the
actually,
thing. I can prowl on for 10 minutes, but Austin can come in with like a fucking factoid like this.
Austin, I told you I've been writing this screenplay
amazing.
about a violinist. And you've just given me that information that now I'm like, shit, I need to rework some stuff. I didn't know a concertmaster existed.
concertmaster is always the...
It's alright, just search and replace. J.K. Simmons just swapped that out for concertmaster.
Yeah, it's always the best paid position in the orchestra. It's always it's always the most kind of, like, there's also a certain sense of, ideally, if you're looking for a change as the conductor, you would say to the concertmaster, I think we need to be a little, gentler with the way we're coming in at bar 25. They will then go, okay, here's how we're going to achieve that. Up bow on the note here, and then they turn and they disseminate that to all the rest of the strings, because if you'll notice, like in a proper orchestra, their movements are exactly in sync with each other. They're not just playing randomly, and the concertmaster is the one who's making those decisions. In fact, they'll often, before like a concert, this isn't true in the studio recording world, but they'll go through and mark the parts of the way they think all this ought to be done, up bows, down bows, etc. And that'll all get put on the musician stands before the first rehearsal based on the concertmaster's recommendation. So that's so
cool.
Part
so
of their
almost
role.
Like an assistant director. It's kind of
they're sort of the co-pilot to the conductor in so
executing the plan.
So why is it a violinist?
Well, part of it is that they're right there. They're immediately next to the conductor.
Why are they always next to the conductor?
That's just the traditional layout of the orchestra. There's a lot of history. Just get him to
write the whole script for you, Alanah.
I know. I'll have to go get my...
she probably needs to want to be a concertmaster now. That is super interesting. I had just had no idea there was even a thing.
Always dreamt of being a concertmaster, yeah.
Yeah, it's...
so cool.
You make me... I'll just mail you a copy of this book by an author named Joan Pizer. That's basically the entire history of how the orchestra, as we understand it, was over time. There's nothing scientifically...
What's the name of that book, Austin? Because otherwise we'll have 10
it's
comments
called The
asking.
Orchestra.
I'll buy it. It's okay. I can buy. You don't need to mail it to me. Also, we don't live that far apart, Austin. You don't have to mail me the book.
In that case, I will frisbee it and just hope it lands on you.
I actually think that my vet is like right next to where you live. I'm pretty sure every time I go to the vet that I should go heckle you.
Yeah,
I think it's literally like a 2-minute walk, so I should go harass you whenever I go to the vet.
I know your work's near a really good coffee shop. That's the only thing I know about. You are,
the best.
Really?
I remember there's an amazing coffee shop near you.
Follow you.
Yeah.
Follow up about that one offline.
We don't
have many of those.
I know this place, Porto's, can't beat the coffee.
Oh, I do know Porto's. Yeah.
There's also Romancing the Bean, which I quite like, which is down the street, I go to. Romancing the Bean. It's a great coffee shop. Enough. It's in Burbank.
Okay.
Who among us has never been to Romancing?
Clearly, yeah. I promise that's not a double entendre. Well, I guess it is,
I think
but
it
not
might
the
be.
way you're
thinking.
Might be.
So then the I always think things that are based on tradition rather than science are infuriating, but I'm willing
that's
to
very much this is a mix of both. Like it's not that the orchestra was refined in a lab It is a product of people iterating on something over hundreds of years and experimenting.
So they did still improve upon it rather than just say they're here because tradition.
But as with actual Darwinian evolution, there's a lot of variables changing simultaneously. For example, the instruments themselves became more acoustically projecting over time. Like modern violins, or modern meaning like the violins of the 19th century onward, are much louder and more... of course I say that, obviously the most famous violins and best made and most valuable in the world are a couple hundred years older than that still.
Of course.
So that's actually a bad example. Let's use brass as an example.
We all know that. We all know that, Austin. Don't patronize us.
Well, like the Stradivarius. Everybody knows the Stradivarius, right?
Yeah.
The average Stradivarius is worth several $1 million. Well, there you go. You should sell one.
What is a Stradivarius that's worth several $1 million?
Stradivarius was the name of a violin maker in Italy. Yeah, that would be quite the... Stradivarius
isn't that also still a thing that the great violin makers can still charge like an incredible amount of money? I remember reading an article
but the difference
about
is
a guy who died and like he'd been like this kind of bespoke violin maker for 60 years and lived in a small flat in London and would just kind of be flown around the world to make violins for people. That's still a thing, right?
Yeah, I mean there are Luther, there are instrument makers who would make a modern violin maker. Of course that if nothing else, students and blah blah blah, there's a constant need for new instruments. So there are people that do it, and then as you can imagine, then there's the people that kind of gradually rise to the top as making really good ones and
sure,
all by hand and blah blah blah. So yeah, I mean if you're buying a really high end violin as a pro, you're going to be spending tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. But a Stradivarius is in the 1 to 10 million kind of range. Like
and what would you say the hobbies of a violinist would be, Austin? What would a violinist do in their spare time, do you think? Like where would they form relationships with new and interesting characters?
All the Hollywood
challenges they have broken down into 3 parts.
Yeah, if you could give us an act structure, that would be so helpful.
The screenplay is fine, except for everything other than I don't know shit about orchestras, and for some reason I decided to violinist, and I was like, I need to ask Austin for help on this.
I say commit to it. I say commit to the fact that you don't know anything. Do like a postmodern like movie where you have no idea what...
It would end up reading...
Like the old Mitchell and Webb sketches.
The thing is, you're sort of broadly smart enough and know just enough about this specific thing that it will probably read like an alternate present. Like it's like, this is a viable thing. It's just not our world, but this is not like ludicrous.
It's like an alt history, but specifically
it's just an alt. Yeah,
just a different scene that I have that's really important, where she's like auditioning for this fancy orchestra that is actually in London. I don't even remember what the name of it, but I looked up the building and everything, and she's really nervous about it in this waiting room, and I was like, I'm so sure that none of this appears this way. I don't imagine that they're actual, like, there's all these people walking in and out. It was like, I don't know that any of this looks like this, but I wouldn't be able to change it because it needs to change.
A bunch of people nervously practicing the violin.
Yeah, I have a lot of people tuning instruments. It was like, they need to do something. I don't fucking know. Like, I don't know what that looks like.
That's probably pretty realistic depending on how sort of big the orchestra. But one thing to bear in mind that's pretty famous, and especially for string auditions, is, but I think they do this for every part, for the last half century, give or take, as a way to combat racism and sexism in hiring practices in orchestras.
So what you're telling me right now, Austin, is something you've said on the show before, which is the thought that sparked the inspiration for this entire screenplay.
So co-producer
they
credit.
Audition blind.
You can get co-producer credit if you want. You did inspire the entire thing with what you're about to say, which is that they audition blind.
They put a screen,
story master,
and you have to like come in a separate entrance, and you're not supposed to wear like high heels and things that would immediately sound a certain way relative to a flat-footed shoe, all that kind of stuff, to make it as truly neutral.
It's super interesting.
I think it's awesome. I mean, because the proof was pretty immediate. There's most of the orchestras that I've worked with, both sitting orchestras and pickups, tend to have pretty solid gender parity, if not principally women. Like growing up in my high school orchestra, for example, there's a few guy friends that I remember, but all like principal viola, principal cello, the flute player, the timpani player. I remember it was all girls in my class.
Every person I know who plays violin or cello is a woman. I don't actually know any men who play violin. I know 4 girls.
There may be interesting, like, also oddly sexist reasons for, like, there may be, I want to play sports. No, you're a girl. You're going to play violin. You know that
the men are all busy sucking a guitar, I imagine. I think that's what it is.
Men like drums.
Like
guitars.
there are these cliches, right?
Yeah, I think that we societally do that. We give gender to our instruments.
But it's
men
funny,
like
it's obviously...
Boy like drums.
What's fascinating is how bullshit it is. Like, one of the most amazing percussionists alive on the planet is a Scottish woman named Evelyn Glennie, who not only is maybe the most impressive percussionist you'll ever see, she's also almost entirely deaf.
I was going to say, she was big on TV when I was a kid. Is she like, she'll be, what, in her like 50s now? I remember seeing her,
she might be older than that.
Shows.
She's one of those, she's hard to guess. She's got just based on how she looks, it could be a really wide range.
No, as a kid, I remember her, she was like the drummer who was always on TV, and she's
57.
She's
Wow.
Yeah, so she was like when I was a kid, she was like a young woman kind of coming up in her career, and like she's the only drummer I would have been aware of as a kid.
She's I think the only percussionist who has made a solo career in the way that like Yo-Yo Ma has a solo career where they guest as the star like headliner with orchestras.
Yeah,
There's not a lot of repertoire for percussionists, as you can imagine. There are percussion concertos, like there are cello concertos and blah, blah. There's a lot fewer of them, and they're pretty much all modern because that was not a thing that composers did prior to the 20th century. But there's still not that much because partly there's just not a lot of stars that orchestras would feel financially comfortable building a show around. She's, I think, the only or one of, she certainly was the first, and still one of the only. Look up her TED Talk that she did ages ago, like in the earliest days of TED. She gave a TED Talk about being a percussionist, and she plays a piece written for just snare drum. But in the hands of someone on her level, it sounds like it's 20 different instruments. She gets so many sounds and so much variety and color and texture.
By vibration as well, right? She plays predominantly via vibration and just knowing
and feel,
like, sensing through body. Yeah. It's amazing.
Like she's not, I don't think she's 100% deaf, but she is definitely, I think, predominantly.
Hearing.
But she can speak, but she has that quality of someone who can't hear their own voice very well. So it's got that, I don't know what you would call it. There's probably a term for that, but that kind of deaf person's, I can still speak. It just, I don't control the nuance of the color and the dynamics of my voices.
Doesn't know how she sounds.
Yeah, I think, but she's totally intelligible. Of course, she also has a Scottish accent on top of it. Which makes me think maybe she wasn't deaf growing up, now that I say that, because I don't know how she would have picked up that accent.
Probably not,
if she was born this. I don't actually know her biography. I just know she's, like, as someone who, because yes, there's the cliche of like, there aren't as many women percussionists. She's one of the like, let's see what we can do about that stars, because she's a fucking inspiration.
So Austin, your answer to the question of how you don't really learn from people is wrong because you learn from everybody in the orchestra. Follow up to that.
Also, my engineer, the guy
I think that's true of game dev as well, for sure. Like I might be the most experienced like game writer on the team, but like the best ideas usually come from someone in the meeting going, it'd be really cool if the character did whatever. Yeah.
I don't think there's a good equivalent to the programmer of like, if you have a crap programmer, the game will not ship, but you can have people who are still learning in other positions, and like you'll find a way to get there. I don't think there's anything that's quite so serious of a bottleneck insofar as I think everybody has to be able to, like, if your engineer sucks.
It would be like if you had to invent the microphone every single time you recorded something. Like that,
that's the thing. Like, the engineer can fuck up a session if you have a bad one. The Pro Tools operator can fuck up a session. The conductor can fuck up a session. The members of the orchestra can fuck up the session. There's like a runner who walks in while the red light is on and just you hear a door open. Like, everybody has to know what they're doing to a certain minimum. Oh God, Canvas just walked through my cable and is like, I feel like I've been harpooned.
Banjo often chokes himself on my headphones. It's not great.
You're right.
Do you see what's happening here?
Austin, you're fine. Yeah, you're in trouble. That's amazing.
He's like, you're done now.
This is like the walker, on Hawk.
All right, well, see you later, Austin. It's good content. So
I love that he still got Star Wars reference in there. Can we enjoy that?
Kind of relevant
With his
to what
last
we were talking
dying
about.
breath, Austin referenced Star Wars.
I love how she's looking at me like, I don't know what you just did.
Canvas was the one that walked into the Play, Watch, Listen recording where we're all podcast hosts these days and ruined it. Outside of that, Austin, I just started the show by asking Mike about a game he had that came out since we last recorded. You have more officially announced a game since we last recorded.
We're rehashing the lost episode here.
Lost episode, yeah.
What is Stray Gods? Oh,
what
hello.
are you doing? Why?
What is Stray Gods?
She's so confused because I'm in headphones, so she doesn't hear you, and
she thinks you're talking to her.
She thinks I'm talking to her. She's like, I don't understand.
I haven't told you that Banjo knows when I stop streaming, so he's either right now he'll be asleep in the bathtub or asleep in his spare room. And when I go, all right, thank you everybody for watching, and then I wave and then I pause for a second, he walks back out because he knows that I've finished recording. He's aware of that cue, amazing. And he comes back.
We're done.
He knows the sign off.
Yeah.
Like and subscribe, and he's out.
That's me.
Yeah.
You know me. Like it and subscribe and all over the place.
I know your content. Yeah.
Silly Candace. She's very adorable. I was actually cute. Really worried about having I don't like having a bunch of shedding hair here in the studio and stuff. I've kept it pretty clean for 10 years. But Anhil is in.
Yes, something got played there. There's like a little chord.
She bumped the hand drum I have sitting on the floor.
Very good.
I had to take the mallets away because she kept picking them up, thinking I think those are for me.
Mm-hmm.
But now I have hair in my mouth as well.
Yeah, that's
a whole different vibe of this show.
I love it. It's great. We should be charging for this. It's improved now.
This is gold content. People miss this show, and
they missed this.
Yes, we announced our cast.
Yep,
we did our showcase where we did some live songs. We kind of explained the nuts and bolts of our interactive music system and demonstrated it for the crowd. Did you miss that part? Didn't you have to be there? Did you come at the halfway
I had
part?
Work, so
yeah, I remember you were there, but I didn't see you till after.
I was like, I have a job, so I can't do that. I got there about just before the intermission.
Okay, yeah. So then you missed our live demonstration where it was so fun. Basically, my whole message with this game has been, our cast are geniuses. That's like the thing I care people walk away with more than anything to do with the music or in it, because it lives and dies by their talents. And I've been obviously sitting here holding my tongue on who is in this game for a year and a half. Laura Bailey and Mary Elizabeth McGlynn were publicly announced ages ago, but then the fact that Troy was playing Apollo and not just our voice director. We have Ashley Johnson, we have Anjali Bhimani, we have Erica Ishii, we have
even
Rahul.
I didn't know about Erica. We've been friends for ages. It was like, it's every person I know.
I know, it really, and everybody's so awesome. Everyone is so I just feel so great. Felicia Day, Janina Gavankar. It's just, there's so many great talents. Anthony Rapp, Merle Dandridge. So the showcase was finally we can put it all out there. We had pretty much all of them able to come do our fun, duet with Laura and Ashley. But the live demo was, Troy and I will reenact a session with Laura where all she ever had as reference was me plunking along on the piano or maybe a guitar, but basically it would just be something really basic. And it would be okay, here's what you're going to sing over top. And the songs are giant toolkits of content because they branch like crazy. And so there's a lot of different spaces it has to be able to go, which means we have to record all these different paths and all these different modular bits. And, each song has, like the big songs, the most elaborate ones, have literally tens of thousands of permutations. And so...
Wild.
So the result is that, we'd get in a session with Laura and it would be okay, we're at measure 720. You'll recall 2 weeks ago, we were looking at this bit where the immediate section prior was if Grace does this, then, Medusa, Anjali Bhamani does this. So this is what we're going to start in now. And it's like, she just has to onboard a lot of stuff that's, it's much worse than just, we're going to shoot this scene today. And you just have to remember where it fits in the trajectory of a linear story, like a movie. Obviously that's a challenge enough. That's quite a skill already, just to shoot all out of order and have to, as an actor, have to shape the character and be like, oh, well, they wouldn't be as angry here because X, Y, Z thing hasn't happened in the story yet, so I need to temper my reaction. Like, you need to know where you are, and obviously that's a big part of the director helping,
How many collaborating. Hours did Laura have to record for?
Like 1 billion. We had something like 90.
Just writing that down in my budget spreadsheet.
Oh yeah. We had. I know.
Like, that's my question as well. It's just like how, because me and Alanah have both been involved in like voiceover recording sessions and stuff, and like I know how much you can get recorded of like dialogue per hour, but like what's the overall, like how long genuinely was like an individual performer in the studio for?
Well, it was all SAG, so we were doing 4-hour calls, and the question was, how many sessions we had to start recording before we'd finished writing the music, because we didn't know about what average recording rate we could achieve, and that was going to affect the scope of how much music there could be in the game. So if it turned out
and also it's harder work for the performer, so you can really only do a 4-hour session, right?
So typically what we would do is Troy and I would tag team, where we would do 2 hours of singing and 2 hours of dialogue with a healthy break in the middle, so that there wasn't she's so cute. You're really needy today.
She's so cute.
Cool.
She's helping.
She is very adorable. Look at that smile.
So it didn't overwhelm them, and it's not like Les Mis style. It's not everything is sung. There's like dialogue. There's a book as well as.
Oh no. I mean, we had 90 sessions, 94-hour sessions, and half of those were Laura. I mean, it was bananas.
What's 90 times 4?
It's amazing.
Like a billion.
Yeah, 360. 360 hours. That's massive. That's crazy.
Yeah, because all told, the songs are like there's about 6 hours of music, give or take.
I'm also comparing that to like SAG rates. That's an expensive.
Well, you can figure out exactly how much that cost if you wanted.
Yeah.
That's assuming
any of these the numbers actors, in my head. That's terrifying.
That's assuming any of our cast work for scale. We pretty much have all name actors.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's if they're minimum scale.
Yeah. Exactly.
Wow, yeah.
Oh, I'm factoring in Troy's rates. I have worked with Troy professionally.
Yeah.
Oh, you got some Troy rates? You got some Laura rates? God damn.
Yeah. I mean, it was. I mean, this is where a huge chunk of the budget had to go, because that's why I was saying.
I mean, that's really the point of the game, though, right? Like that is your.
That's your value. Yeah, that's what people are buying it for. So it's the right thing to do. It's when you have like crazy amounts of voiceover, and that's not the star of the show, that things can like escalate, and you kind of look at it and go, "Why?"
Yeah, what is the value out of this? Yeah, exactly.
But this is the whole. This is like you say, Alanah. This is the star.
No, it's so impressive. Like, I'm so excited to play the game. Liam did play a little bit of it in front of me at the event, and the fact that each playthrough is so distinct is a thing that we've been sold since the beginning of time. I do feel like this particular game may have the most variables of anything I have ever seen before. It's incredibly impressive.
I mean, like, for example...
And those variables are very visible as well,
right,
because of that music, because of the voiceover. That's the thing from the Lost episode, Austin. Do you want, like, I don't know if Alanah knows about all of the stuff you're talking to me about with, like, the musical shifts as well, right? Like, the songs themselves change genre and shit.
Yeah, that's what we were able to demonstrate at the showcase bit, but like, before you got there, was we did a song twice in a row, and we didn't have the interaction happening live because that would have required them to prepare in rehearsal a bunch of shit that they weren't going to end up singing, right? Like, okay, it's going to be one of the following 5 things. Well, that means 4/5 of your rehearsal time is a waste. So I said, let's do a mock, like a 3-part shtick. First, we'll do a mock recording session just to show like how Laura would have to drop in. You're really.
No, I love it. She's making it. She's helping.
I know. See, I'm normally very pretentious, and she's making me very, very
making you a real dog dad vibes.
Yeah, I know. This is a total rebranding for me. Oh dear God, it's gonna be a big loud sound on the microphone at that
all right.
point in the show. So we did our little mock recording session where Troy plays director, I play composer, and we show like Laura had to just step in out of nowhere and just remember where we were from 4 days earlier or a week earlier, or in some cases, a few weeks earlier, depending. And then from there, it was, okay, now we're bringing out Mary Elizabeth, and we'll do a path through this song. It's kind of a big confrontation song between Grace and Persephone at the beginning of the game. And then it says, then it was like, okay, what if you had done different things? Let's show a different path.
Did you let the audience choose?
No, because again,
they complicated.
They'd have had to have rehearsed.
We would have had to rehearse every possibility, which we had one rehearsal that morning for this show. Well, that's not true. We did do a little run through. Laura and Ashley and Troy and Anjali came over to the studio a couple days earlier just to kind of, if nothing else, for me to brief them on what was coming, and then we could kind of like step through it. But like with the live instruments and all that was once, and then okay, doors are opening in 30 minutes, everybody. Let's get rolling. So it had to streamline it as much as possible to make their life easier. So the one thing that was cool though that I was really happy with was because the choices are color coded. It's sort of a cousin of the classic BioWare, like, blue versus red dialogue tree options of, like in Mass Effect, it's the Paragon versus the Renegade, or it's like Jedi versus Sith and Knights of the Old Republic. As a cousin of that, we have our red, green, blue, where red is kind of like the antagonistic and aggressive. Green is sort of the empathic and compassionate, and blue is the conniving or intellectual or scheming or whatever, like especially in the context of you're in a showdown with somebody, there's 3 totally different strategies by which to deal with them, which are going to yield totally different reactions. And so in the context of a musical number, it's not just that the lyrics are totally different, like the personality of the delivery, and then it goes a lot further of like the whole genre will change. Like it might be jazz versus like driving, like 90s rock, kind of like a Nirvana kind of vibe or something. Like it's entirely based on the player's choice. So what we did in the live one was, because it was just sung as a song for the audience, we had the lighting cues where every time the player would be making one of those choices where we're at a branching point, we would change all the like flooding colors on the stage so that you go, oh, okay, that's why the vibe just shifted, because the player hit red. But if you close your eyes, it should just feel like a song that's telling a story that has its bobbing and weaving and ups and downs. And
so I can register how that's different for the actors/singers. For you, does that mean that you are mixing 2 completely different genres of song to sound like they belong together? I imagine that's extremely complicated.
It's often 3+ genres because it evolves. Like there's a song that starts off like the one we did as part of the performance of how it goes live. Is it starts off like bordering on disco, like it's very kind of fast and aggressive, and a lot of like hi-hat. And I love how she's been so chill the whole day, and then
not now.
The instant we record, she's like,
I'm happy about it.
It's because you've been silent all day, I guess. You've just been working, and it's been... Can I ask a really boring technical question? Are you banjo-kazooieing it? Are you basically playing all those tracks simultaneously or cross-fading between them? Or are you literally, like, have you broken things down by, like, line to line, verse to verse?
It's that.
The second one?
No, yeah, because if we had to make... It would be far more taxing. It would actually probably break... If we had to make a discrete... canvas, you're killing me.
I love it.
You're killing me.
He would never be Grant Kirkhope is basically what he's saying. Lazy.
He's like, I'm better than Grant Kirkhope. That's what he's basically
saying. I mean,
it's
not uncommon.
I just realised I used banjo-kazooieing as a verb in a podcast, which is solid.
It's not...
I forgot about that.
It's not uncommon to have parallel stream... Okay. Enough.
Do you have any treats she
It's
can
the
eat?
two you didn't even know were there.
I wish. The problem is I'm now rewarding her for being annoying.
That is true. But she's so cute. She has such an expressive face, Austin.
I know. She does. It's full of
Like that face screams play.
Yeah.
It's time to play?
Adorable. She might need to go out also.
Yeah, she may need to go out.
A few hours ago, but...
Yeah.
Anyway,
What kind of dog?
Biting your arm.
I'm just going to let her chew on my hand. That'll be
That seems fine.
That'll be the solution.
That seems fine.
Here's what I'm going to do.
Sorry. Excuse me.
I am going to drop in the chat an image that you can see.
I would love to see it.
Let's see.
Let me just find it. Oh, I've got her distracted just licking my hand here. My arm is now extremely disgusting. But hey, come back over. Come on. She's protesting.
This is great for audio listeners. Austin is being
Mauled
attacked.
by a bear, actually.
Yeah.
I know, seriously.
Yeah.
Come here.
It's
His
terrifying.
professionalism in the face of this situation
Doing a
is
great
impressive.
job. Hire Austin.
He's doing
everybody.
amazing.
Yeah.
He's,
Seriously.
again, much better than Grant Kirkhope would be doing. He's just really kind of nailing it.
Much better than...
Right?
You know, we never addressed on the show that Austin bought me I forget what it's called.
Cameo.
A cameo from Grant Kirkhope to insult me after I named my dog Banjo.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna pat my own back on the show. Quit it. She's doing this husky thing where they make these little tiny bites. They're not because they have super... What's this drama?
That's very dramatic.
Seriously, look at that face. That's
She's
a
so
drama
cute.
queen.
That's a face you can't say no to, yeah.
Huskies
Even
are very
though-
noisy also. That it does seem like a nightmare. But
Thank God she doesn't do the husky, like, you know, they're
Talking
like
constantly?
"Wah!" thing that they do. They're like full on scream. Thank God she does not do that.
It's so funny though.
It's
When it's not my dog.
yeah, exactly. On Instagram, I love it.
Yeah, big fan.
And I'm trying to find this damn tweet.
Oh, look, it's Banjo. Oh, you want to say hi to Canvas? Little Banjo?
Now she runs off. Maybe she got jealous immediately.
That's all we needed is big dog to...
I am so
Sure,
intimidated right now by the doorway.
Yeah.
That's intimidating.
Terrifying.
That is intimidating. It's unavoidably scary.
Where in the hell is this?
Yeah, Austin bought me a cameo from Grant Kirkhope.
Oh, here we go.
That we never mentioned, because it was one of those things that I watched it and was like, oh my god. I just didn't know what to say.
I think you immediately texted me and go, "Did you pay for this?"
I did, yeah. Oh,
And I was like, "Well, it's win-win. I get to support one friend by trolling another."
okay, you've sent me a tweet.
Yeah.
So what's cool about this is that is like, I just love how visible that is to the player, because that's basically like, that is the structure of every conversation, like in Tron Identity or Subsurface Circuit or any of our games. But because of the musical aspect, it becomes front and center in a way that just isn't possible with text.
Wait, so there are some that are sort of both?
Can't wait to
Does
play
this read
this.
like there's something here that's like kick-ass and charming?
Yeah, because the thing is, I realize I'm off camera.
Yeah, none of you are actually visible right now anyway, because I have the tweet up, so you're fine.
So, the whole point is that it's supposed to be compounding. So the idea is, if I chose Kick-Ass at the beginning, and then I immediately chose Charming, there's a difference between if I did the flip of that. Because tonally, if I get in your face and I'm like, listen, you son of a bitch, and then I go, you know what? That was too strong. Forgive me. That's a totally different emotional arc than, let's have a conversation. And then I don't like what you say, and I go, what the fuck are you talking? Like, so the song can't just be this, now this, now this, and just slotting in a thing. It has to remember where you've come from and tell that story, which means the only way to do this, as far as I can tell, is just a fuckload of content that accounts for every conceivable possibility.
Wow. That's very
It's
cool.
like Stargate. You need to know where you're coming from and the destination.
Yeah.
That's what I call it.
Exactly.
For audio listeners, I wouldn't even really know how to describe this, but we'll say the first option
It's
has
a-
9 paths.
It's a decision tree.
Yeah, a
but
giant
with the
decision
musical
tree,
elements
colored
kind
based
of
on Kick-Ass,
applied
Clever,
into it.
Charming, and Hub, and then the decision and whatever's automatic. It's super detailed and broken down into chorus, bridge, chorus 2, pre-chorus, verse 3. verse 3.
Yeah, because that's the other thing. It has to still feel like a song. Like
Yeah.
if it's just a constant steady stream of new stuff, then it doesn't feel like an actual song where you're like, oh, here's the hook again. There's that chorus line that I recognize, blah, 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 blah. So you have to impose structure even while giving the player a lot of agency.
How many songs do you have? Does that question make sense?
In the game?
Yeah.
There are...
You would have a finite amount of songs. It's just that the songs have variables, right?
Exactly. No, each song exists in kind of like a quantum state of possible songs. And there's several dozen, like a couple dozen musical numbers. And some of them are more elaborate than others, of course. The grand finale has literally like 70-something million possible ways it can play.
Wow.
It's pretty bonkers. Now, that's slightly pedantic because some of those differences... It's like the joke I heard you say, Mike, of like we're in an alternate universe where everything is the same except the orchestra is configured slightly differently. Like that's basically the same universe. There are some differences that are like that, where there are differences because things you will have done triggered something, but if you made a lot of very similar decisions otherwise, you might not realize it. But then there are at least thousands of possible decisions that are wildly different. I mean, like different characters are alive or not, or like different people like you or not, all that kind of stuff. Like narrative differences, core experiential differences to the game.
So, Austin, again, I felt like this game is so technically impressive since you first started talking about it, I don't know, however many years ago. But does it bother you when it does, when it comes out that some people will only play through it once and they will have no knowledge of those differences?
Yeah, well, no, that doesn't bother me at all because the idea is to, like, the subtitle, we call it Stray Gods, a role-playing musical. The goal is to encourage you to role-play. It's not a scavenger hunt of find all the bits we made. The goal is...
Also, when you're making choice-based media, like, it's also about the value of the path not taken. The path not taken validates the path you took because you chose not to go down.
I also don't feel that way with writing. People ask me that. If someone opts not to choose to go down a certain quest, I don't mind. It doesn't bother me, but it's when there's this much choice.
That's in itself a choice.
I guess it isn't, and it makes sense that what you're saying is ultimately like, no, because what we're doing is making sure we've made a good role-playing game.
Yeah, we want the choice to matter to the point.
This is just what it looks like.
Yeah, if the choice didn't matter, then people would see most everything you made. Like, because obviously they wouldn't have that much agency, just by definition. So the goal was, let's make it so that, because some of these songs, like the one we did live, where Grace, the main character played by Laura, and the character of the Queen of the Underworld, Persephone, Persephone played by Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, this is a very standoffish scene. It starts off in a kind of disco sort of vibe, but like it's like dark, sort of thorny disco, which is fun. And depending on what Grace does, like it can end in a very like emotionally kind of lyrical and very sweet way where it becomes almost orchestral and like tragic feeling. And then there's others where like what we showed is Grace has managed to get the entire crowd in the nightclub where it's taking place singing with her, and it's like this raucous, over-the-top crowd musical number, where it evolves over the course of it. Well, if somebody feels moved by going down the first route and feels like that was awesome, that they shouldn't. It's like a failure to make them enjoy it that would have them go, I want to go back and try the other options. Like obviously if they understand the gimmick of the game, they might be curious, and that's obviously we like that. And of course there's also the hope that there's a certain amount of kind of water cooler, oh, you did this, oh, that's how you, like, how did you get that
was actually
leg?
Like genuinely the biggest surprise with Identity, because it's similarly branching and has a lot of choices, and honestly more choices than we've done previously. Yeah. And I genuinely didn't think people would want to replay it. You hope, obviously, that people want to revisit, but I thought most players would just play their version, have their choices, but everyone's replaying it. It's becoming this kind of possibility space game. It's... I could actually look them up. I could actually look them up live.
I do always wonder how often people actually replay games. Like, players talk about wanting replayability.
Considering how few even finish games, it must be a
No,
fractionally tiny.
So I might be reading the numbers wrong, so this is with big caveats, but it looks like on Identity, of the people who've started the game, so obviously a lot of people buy a game on Steam and then just don't start it, so we'll remove all of them.
Guilty.
Yeah.
Hello, thanks for your support.
I've done that tons.
Perfect player, someone who gives me money and doesn't have any bugs. That's great.
Yeah,
you keep playing and not generating any bugs, Austin. You feel free to do that. That's great.
I did the ultimate
QA process.
But I still have not had a minute to.
Okay.
So you partly blame Respawn because I have had some gaming time.
That's
and
fair. Those are good games.
It went to Jedi Survivor. Sorry.
Also been playing that.
Yeah, I will never worry about Respawn because they are geniuses. So of the people who've actually bothered to support me as a friend, those people are. Of the people who've actually started the game, about half of them have finished, which is a ridiculously high number.
Really good.
I'm really proud of that.
That's really good.
It's a relatively, it's a shorter game. We're not talking about a 40-hour experience here, but that's good. That's better, I think, than Subsurface Circular.
But yeah, I also think that the fact that there's no, because Journey would be a natural comparison here as well. There's no fail state where you would just have to quit. You won't get frustrated and rage quit.
Exactly.
On a game
this is just which honestly that's good. I'm really happy with that number. And then of those, from my maths, about a third of those players then play it again.
So a third, so 1/6, give or take, of the total player
I reckon
base,
have played more than once. Yeah.
That's gotta be way higher than normal.
That's my point, Austin. That's what I'm seeing in conversations, reviews. It's definitely one people want to. You finish and you've made a lot of choices and you've seen those choices play out and you want to see if you can do it differently. And fortunately, it's not. When you're just there are entire scenes in Identity that don't happen on your first playthrough. You will literally not see all of the scenes in the game if you play it just once through.
Yeah.
So no, that's.
Have
actually
you done the math on
good.
how many discrete playthroughs are possible?
If we were doing the kind of the way you're doing with your songs,
if you wanted to catalog every.
It's hundreds of thousands because you make a choice in Identity every 2 minutes. So if you were to make, but it's like yours, it's a string of pearls, so it goes out into lots of options and then ties back together. So it's a few branches, few big discrete branches, and then obviously lots of micro choices that are more about role playing and tone. And have some cumulative impact, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We have.
That diagram you shared shows it. You have moments where it splits apart, and then moments where it kind of comes back together again, and etc.
Yeah, and all the songs are built a little differently because they're built based on the narrative desires of the song. For example, the comedic bit with Rahul as the Minotaur is comparatively a lot simpler of a song because it's stuff will happen, and then he'll come back in with a thing that we could repurpose a few places because it's actually funnier if it sounds like he's almost ignoring you. There's bits like that. Where
there's all those tricks you play to get the variety. You have to because otherwise you'd be making a holodeck. But I think probably so in terms of the kind of, I think it was you on the Lost podcast referred it to it as Borderlands maths. With Borderlands maths, was it you who said that? Where it's basically all the gun. Oh, must be someone else must have used that phrase recently for me. The kind of the permutations of guns. There's millions of guns in Borderlands, but it's because of the combinations. With that kind of maths, we're talking hundreds of thousands of playthroughs to get possible playthroughs Identity. I reckon if you played the game through 6 or 7 times, you could see every line of dialogue, but you'd have to work hard to make your choices to get through the right paths in order to see. Actually, no, that's not true. It'd be more than that. It'd be 9 or 10. But yeah, anyway, it's it's good. But I'm glad I looked up those numbers live because those are surprisingly good. Yeah,
the Borderlands actually is a great. I didn't come up with that, and I will start using that as an analogy to explain. But yeah, that's a good way to explain.
Which, to be clear, I'm not throwing shade on Borderlands, but obviously
it doesn't come
millions
across
of
as
guns.
Negative.
Yeah.
No, it just clarifies the difference of there's choice is not a single
impactful
concept.
maths and Borderlands maths.
Because there's choices that will fundamentally change the gaming experience in a deep-rooted way, and then there's changes that are cosmetic and have no impact, and then there's changes that are kind of in between those where they have an impact and you might feel it and I like playing with this gun more than that other gun, but the the sense of the story, the characters won't be changed. So I think the vast majority of Stray Gods changes are the really highly impactful and that middle zone. We don't really have an equivalent to like play exactly the same, but this gun instead of that gun. But we do approach that. But the thing is, they're all second order effects based on what you do. Like, for example, one of the things that we explained on the night of the event was that I create instrumental associations with the color choices. So that, for example, every time you choose red, at every point in the game, you will hear an electric bass. So that there's like a Pavlovian sense of, oh, I did a thing and something predictable happened, because that's obviously very important from a design standpoint, that if I do a thing, it shouldn't just feel like something happened. It seemed like, let's make the songs have some degree of predictability. So the sound, the actual presentation of it will be a thing that you can predict with complete certainty once you see this is what's going on. That you get clarinets with blue, you get harp with green, you get electric bass, and they are prominently featured instruments separate from whatever's going on lyrically and genre and blah, 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 narratively, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one of those tricks where we're able to make it where, like you saw in that diagram on the thing, some of the decisions will fold you into where if you want to choose something else, you have to have made a different decision earlier because it's compiling several, and you can track that particularly by listening to the instruments that are playing, where you're going, oh, I didn't click red, but I'm hearing red because I've like been swept momentarily down a red stream. But that doesn't have to have been that way. It could have been a green stream or a blue stream or that kind of thing. So there's a lot of complexity where, to me, that's more noticeable than just I have a scope on my gun versus not. But it's not the same thing as, you know, if I pick character A versus character B, one will die.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So the game, it's a combo of things that you'll notice and make experiential differences, and then there's others that like make core gameplay differences. And yeah, even if you're really strict in how you draw those fences, there's like just thousands and thousands and thousands of possible playthroughs. I think.
So impressive. Very cool. I can't wait to play it. When's it come out, Austin?
August 3rd.
August 3rd.
We're still in our
would you say that players who want to have a similar experience between now and then should pick up Tron Identity on Steam and Switch?
Is that a thing that you would say, Austin?
I would say that
I don't
Tron
put
Identity...
words in your mouth, Austin, but like...
No, you plucked it right out of my brain.
Could you say literally what I just said, please, into the microphone?
Tron Identity is my favorite game on the Citadel. I think Tron Identity, to whet your appetite for the branching
a game, to be clear, that you've not
game.
played. Yeah.
Irrelevant. You don't need to bring that up.
But actually, it is funny how they are really kind of genetic cousins in so many regards. And
I'm an inspiration to you, right? That's what it is.
I mean, look, I remember when I first played Subsurface Quarantine, because you had quite a bit more branching.
No such game exists. You mean Subsurface Circular or Quarantine Circular?
Quarantine Circular. Wait, what?
He played both of them. He's combined the two.
He played both of them.
What is the sequel? What is the Quarantine's actual name? I always fuck it up.
There's Subsurface Circular and Quarantine Circular.
Oh, see, I flipped
thank you
which
so
one
much
I
for
thought
playing
was the
either of them.
modular.
Yeah.
I played them both. And Quarantine was the one that had the more elaborate branching.
That's true.
Where I watched on YouTube there was an ending that I genuinely, I had to go back and go, where did that sort of juncture occur? Because I could not figure out how they got that. And so,
watching somebody else play
arguably
Papers,
that was
Please.
a limitation of Quarantine Circular. Yeah.
No, but I liked that. That made me intrigued because I just chose what I thought was right. And then I saw an ending I thought was cool, and I was like, well, wait a minute. What would I have had to have done that would have been a suspension of my normal instincts in order to get this outcome I like? And that to me is a very interesting type of game design. So you're not wrong to call what you do, and you incarnate an inspiration, because that's the kind of stuff that we thought, okay, since we don't have gameplay mechanics separate from this, it's not like, oh, we also have this super fucking awesome crafting system or something. This better be fucking deep. This better be worth going through, and you know, there'll be a lot more stories to tell when it actually comes out, but it's been so much fun. And like I said, the night of the thing, the broken record that I was just working with this cast has been a career and life highlight. Like, Laura is superhuman. Watching Troy, I wish he was here to. Well, actually, it's probably good that he's not, because he would have been interjecting to steer me off of just foaming at the mouth. But watching him direct was amazing. Like, truly, genuinely, he's so good at it.
Rahul had really positive things to say about working with Troy.
He was so much fun to work. Rahul was such a joy. It was such, like, he made it very clear that he was coming in a bit apprehensive of, like, I'm probably gonna make an ass of myself. But
is it his first singing role?
Yeah,
they must have done a musical episode of iZombie, right?
They did, but I don't think he sang. He danced. He did theater for a long time, so I wouldn't be surprised if he had to at some point, but not in a long time.
He is a I mean, it's fun hearing different playtesters, different standouts, because obviously David Gator coming from Dragon Age, like, people debate about, oh, this romance is the best, and a lot of, you know, as with Mass Effect, a similar thing. That was very much the goal, to achieve that here. Like, you did what? That's ridiculous. This is the best version. You know, like, the goal is to hopefully get people really excited about the choices that they made. And therefore, there should hopefully be a bunch of different standout moments. But I will say, Rahul is consistently a standout moment, because he's just his character is so funny. Like, it's actually a very, well, I'm getting ahead of what I'm probably supposed to say pre-launch, but he's very funny. And just, he crushed it, for a character that wasn't.
Don't tell him though, Alanah. Can you not tell him?
No,
he'd be insufferable.
Oh, terrible! Yeah, no, Can you imagine? What is he? The main character?
Well, System Shock Twitter account was the main character of Twitter yesterday.
I don't use Twitter anymore. What happened?
They like had posted up a bunch of, like, AI generated art, and were, like, going down the AI art path. Which is ironic given System Shock's plot, obviously.
Yeah, System Shock 2 was definitely, when it came out, to me, like, blew my mind. I thought it was absolutely incredible. And it's way, way more of the immersive sim in the Deus Ex vein than BioShock is far more of a shooter, which is probably why it's also far more successful. It's a lot more sort of like, it's a little bit simpler of a
commercially
gameplay.
Appealing.
Yeah. I never realized until kind of recently that System Shock 2 was actually a bit of a commercial failure. It was like 100,000 some odd units or 200,000 units, which blew me away, because when I played it, I was like, this must surely be like the game of the year to everyone ever. It just was so compelling to me.
Strongly in agreement. And also the re-release,
sure.
Everybody, of System Shock, that I'm actually not sure if this is a re-release or a remake. I need to look into it, but it is called System Shock.
They did a Kickstarter for one, right?
I
don't know if it ever came out.
It's coming out on May 30th.
Oh, it's coming out.
I had it on my list of, like, games I really want to play, but I'm not sure.
I remember that being on Kickstarter years ago. I didn't know
fully fledged
so
remake of the groundbreaking original from 1994.
Yeah,
so it's a full remake, and it looks really good. I hope it's good.
Cool.
Yeah. Boy, wow. Cool. Yeah, I didn't realize that was coming out so soon. I remember first hearing about that ages ago, and I just assumed it kind of died on the vine. I forgot all about it.
Well, see, you're the part of the reason that System Shock 2 didn't sell well, Austin. You got to keep up with your release dates of System Shock.
That's why they had to go and make Jurassic Park Trespasser, didn't they?
They did. Yeah, 100%, because they had to keep the studio afloat.
The greatest video game ever made.
Oh, 100%. I actually love almost every Jurassic Park video game, I'm not going to lie.
Have you ever played the one on Sega CD from the mid-90s?
I never had a Sega CD, no.
Remember the Game Boy one, which had, like, scenes from the book, because it was made before the movie, so, like, it was, like, all the stuff from the book rather than the film, but clearly they didn't have access to the script for the movie.
I assume
as a licensed game dev, I can relate.
The Sega CD game I played the shit out of because I would rent it from Blockbuster, and it's just so janky. I was watching a capture on YouTube of it not that long ago.
It does look really bad.
Oh, it's so bad, and as happens with so many Sega CD games, it has all these FMV like interstitials.
Oh yeah,
with bad actors who are like giving you your mission, and then you go back into the world, because the whole premise of it is that, like, after the events of the movie, you're supposed to go back to the island and get a bunch of eggs, like, to kind of finish the mission that Nedry started, except you're one of the good guys, because of course those bad guys do show up, and you have to end by shooting bad guys instead of just dinosaurs.
Of course, yeah.
And it's just one of those really, really silly, but the thing that's so funny is they have these FMV actors But it's in that little sliver of time where the tech is supporting that, and therefore you can do audio playback, but the budgets are still quite low. So it's all like really bad MIDI music that sounds absolutely nothing like the sort of aesthetic of Jurassic Park. It's a lot closer to like, 80s like Metroid, kind of classic chiptunes.
I miss those days. I miss them.
Well, I feel like people don't realize that music with licensed stuff, there is a good reason why licensed games often don't actually have like the John Williams score. It's because it's the John Williams score, and those rights aren't necessarily fully owned by any one particular,
Or they cost
licensed games.
They're an extra cost.
Astronomically expensive. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like it's notable that LucasArts pretty much always until after 2000 you just reused the John Williams scores, like especially after CD-ROM and we could play back audio, and you weren't just doing live hardware synthesis like 8-bit, 16-bit chipsets. Like you think of playing X-Wing Alliance, for example, or Shadows of the Empire, whatnot. It's just they're literally just dragging and dropping the original film's recordings. So it's ironic
that's the power of the Star Wars soundtrack, right?
But how funny
play
also
that music, and it's half your production value.
That's the thing, especially comparing it to other games of the time where it's all original music. They don't have anywhere like these are London Symphony, Abbey Road. You don't, and then you like shift over to a different trying to think of a comparable game, and Mario 64 or something, totally different vibe, because actually that's probably not a great comparison because still compositionally so excellent, but just a far cry from the London Symphony in my space sim. Anyway, I see here an AI using AI to imagine what AI would look like.
I just showed you it's the System Shock Twitter account.
Yes, we see the System Shock tweet here.
Which went on...
I can understand why
did not
they got
go
shit
down
for this.
well.
So their first tweet is System Shock, look at you, hacker, a pathetic creature of meat and bone, your body weak, fragile. How can you challenge me, a perfect machine? Imagine, how would my immortal body look like? Great sentence. Designed by an immortal machine for an immortal machine, which is like an AI-generated image. Their quote tweet is really the problem, which is them saying an AI using an AI to imagine what AI would look like in physical form doesn't get more meta than that, which was the entire point of starting the conversation. No, it wasn't. You got in trouble for sharing AI art. You said
I do like that I was just trying to start a conversation.
I'm just trying to have discourse, man. No,
we're just talking here. We're just talking.
No. Come on.
I mean, look, in fairness to them, that's the one game, not the one, but it is a game where it actually is a on-topic conversation.
That's
that
fair.
Is true.
That's fair.
I mean, like, they may have actually had very pure and innocent intentions and just been oblivious to the fact that
they made it sound like they were trying to get people riled up, and I don't buy that. I think that was a mistake.
Yeah, I'm not crying. You're crying.
Yes, I'm not trolled. You're trolled.
Yeah.
What are you doing back there? Oh, good. Yeah, thumbs up. All right, hey. Before we wrap up, Austin, do you have any brief thoughts on Jedi Survivor?
I have been quite enjoying it. I think some of the issues I hear, I largely agree with, but they're not deal breakers for me. Like the platforming can be really cumbersome, and there's like a lot of, mid-air dash, jump to this thing, wall run, do the thing. And I don't love that 90% of the time my payoff is for a lightsaber thing that has no actual gameplay impact, because I can't not...
A lot of cosmetics.
It's pretty much all, like, it's seemingly 80% are outfits for you, BD1, or...
Lightsaber.
The lightsaber. And I think that's cool. But the fact that that's the majority, I don't love that, because I know that I'm the type that when I see the map and it goes 97% discover, I'm like, motherfucker, I can't not go get the stuff. And so...
I do feel like it's more traversal heavy than the previous game.
Well, it's because it's practically an open world
in some sections.
Design.
It's very big,
it's huge. And yeah, that part is... I'm a little mixed on that. And I'm a little mixed on the like... I was watching the Skill Up review, and he was pointing out how like the enemy composition is a bit sort of schizophrenic, where you'll have like legions of very easy to kill droids and stormtroopers and stuff, and then these creatures and stuff that can pretty much one shot kill you, and there's not a lot of middle ground. I enjoy when it's a challenge. Like I will, you know, like it's actually fun. It kind of gets that style pretty well for me. But so it's like I look at it and I go, is this flawless? No, there's a lot of little things. Also, I have been playing it on a pretty top of the line gaming PC, and it crashes all the time.
Yeah, performance problems are real bad.
The performance issues that people are complaining about, I've felt them. I noticed that if I launch the game with the continue button, it will crash on launch 100% of the time. But if I manually load, it seems to be fine. None of that has stopped me from playing. And look, here's the thing: above all, it feels like real Star Wars in a way. It feels like a classic Star Wars, like LucasArts '90s game, beautifully. Like it does the Star Wars world immersion so well. And it's like you mix it with Andor and the previous one, Fallen Order, and Rogue One, and that's like those are like the 4 Star Wars things in 20 years that I think hold their own to classic Star Wars. Like to me, I feel like I'm in a Star Wars thingy, and I love that they do the best version of what Star Wars always did, which is let's take something familiar, and then mix it with a bunch of new stuff, and also maybe give it a variation. Like this is not really a spoiler because it's one of the very first things you encounter, but I love the fact that you immediately encounter droid army, like Clone War, droid troopers, you know, the little Roger guys, because
they're so cute.
But they're not separatist. They are a derelict that was discovered by basically like Mad Max style pirates that realized, oh, we can program these guys to be our minions. So you get like they're all painted with war paint and stuff. And I'm like, that's a way to take the familiar and then put it in a way that's totally fresh. You've got your little familiar, you know, looking enemies. You hear those voices again, but it's a totally new context. And so it doesn't feel like mindlessly just giving us, oh, I see, it's a rehash of this or that or that. It's really not, but it's...
No, they've done a great job of making it feel fresh without making it feel too different. Do you think Troy will ever get off Coruscant?
Troy's still on the...
He's never got off the train.
He's still on the train.
You never go off the train.
I actually thought about that the other day. I was playing the game and I just randomly burst out laughing alone here in my room because I was like, boy, we've come a long way since that train. That opening sequence in the first one is one of my favorite like video game Star Wars moments of all time.
I played that last night. I'm replaying Fallen Order, and I just finished train it last week.
No, Fallen Order to prepare for Jedi Survivor, which I also really like, but I actually don't like how open it is. Because of a thing you just touched on.
That's my concern with the reviews, because I love the Fallen Order I love that like Dark Souls light style structure.
Yeah,
so
me
much.
too. I also like the map, but I was saying this, I think on Twitch yesterday, that the open world sections also have a lot of like screen tearing and frame rate problems. And for what? Like, when what you're saying is correct, that I just end up getting anxiety when it's open because I don't know what I've missed and where. That I'm just like, oh, there's probably stuff here that I need to go find every single thing here, but it doesn't actually bring me enjoyment. It brings me anxiety because I'm like, what if I step in the wrong direction and it triggers a cutscene? Oh no! But I love the combat. I think the combat feels awesome. I think the traversal mechanics are much more smooth. Like, I love that you have all your abilities from the jump rather than it being like, oh, for some reason Cal can't force push anymore.
That's actually not to be underappreciated, I think. Like, because so many sequels have this, like Star Wars or Magic type games, you know, you have to like learn a power. They constantly have that problem where how do you start over a sequel? How do you onboard the play? I love that they're just like, no. Yeah, you have the I think the framing was, how do you go from Jedi Knight to Jedi Master or something like that? Which I was like, that's a great design, sort of North Star.
Yeah,
you know,
I think they also made Cal a more interesting character too. He's pretty plain, I guess, in the first game. In this one, they gave him some more attitude, a little more.
I also major shout out to the actor that plays Grease. I pretty much love every word out of that guy's mouth.
Big fan.
He has this kind of like quasi Danny DeVito character quality that I just love him. I loved him in the first one, and because he's sarcastic, but then he'll have these moments of real heart, where he's like, he's like, things are gonna be okay, kid, and it just I'm like, boy, the actor had like one line to make me feel something, and they stuck the landing.
Yeah.
I think all of them. The woman who plays Marin as well, I also consistently I loved her in the first game. I'm guessing halfway or between a third and a halfway through. So I haven't obviously
I think
seen
it's like
the
20
majority
hours.
of what. Well, I think that's probably, if you mainline it, it's probably 20 hours. If you're the idiot who has to find every fucking chest, it's surely more than that, because I think I've put in close to 20, and I definitely am not near the end.
It is really hard not to. It's a struggle. All right, we're back, everybody. Yeah. Thanks for watching this episode of Play, Watch, Listen. I'm Alanah, Pearce, I'm a video game writer. That's Mike Bidley, he's a video game director. That's Austin Wintory and Canvas, both of whom are video game composers. We heard her play the hand drum. You heard it here
better than Austin, if I'm honest.
I've never heard him play it, so he probably can't. Canvas all over the place.
Yeah. I love that you feel the need to demonstrate that you're better at playing that drum than John.
My dog. Fucking watch me.
I have actual mallets. She can't. She doesn't have.
You stopped her from playing the mallets. To be fair,
no, I stopped her from chewing them and destroying them.
Maybe she was trying to play with them.
Play us out, Austin. Play us out.
Give you a nice sort of
gathered here today.
Exactly.
Troy had a meeting, by the way.
Troy had a meeting that he went to.
This is not normally. It's not normally used.
Really sleepy, actually.
This is not normally how we would use it, but I just love the
now we're watching children's television.
That is what I'm good for.
All right, bye, everyone.
Where orchestras are slightly different.